And in this particular, this last chapters of the Gospels, which is from the 2nd century, and we do know this also because of our creeds. You know that we have one, maybe two words about God, one phrase about the Holy Spirit, and a huge amount of phrase about Jesus. It shows us that Jesus is a problem. He is a figure in dispute. Who is he? What is he? What he does or didn't do? It is a figure in dispute. Because depends which Jesus I have in my mind, I organize my life and my institution. This was the question in the 13th, 14th century when the Franciscans were debating with the Pope, with the institutional church, about possession. So Jesus had possessions, or everything he had was borrowed or shared. It might be a naive question or a small question, but it's not. If Jesus has possessions, so therefore the church is right to be rich and to have possessions. If Jesus does not have possessions, if everything that Jesus had were from sharing, so therefore the nature of church is sharing, not accumulating for a small privileged group. It's a huge debate in the 13th century, and it's a huge debate now as well. So this is politics, economy, which is theology. This is why the figure of Jesus is quite important, and who he is. The Gospel of Mark is a very interesting gospel. Let me see if I have the scheme here. The Gospel of Mark, it's a very interesting gospel because it is divided in two parts. That is here now. Let me see. And in the middle of the Gospel of Mark is chapter 8, when I don't have this here. So when I find it, I will share. The middle of the Gospel of Mark is chapter 8. So it's a kind of going up into a mountain. So you go from the chapter 1 until chapter 8. So you are walking with Jesus, you are sharing, maybe learning. The disciples actually didn't learn quite well. The males didn't learn quite well, but anyway, this was the intention. And when it comes to the peak of the mountain, then you can see the other side. But before that, you can't see the other side. You are just enjoying the journey, which is healing, preaching, changing people's life, being nice, being empathic, which this is good. But then in the chapter 8, Jesus asks the disciples who people are saying I am. And because we are very good gossipers since the dawn of the world, we love gossips. Everybody knows what everybody was saying. And they shared. Oh, people are saying that you are John the Baptist incarnate. People are saying you are this or that. It's okay, but Jesus then go further. So like, okay, that's fine, thank you, but who do you think I am? Of course, Peter, because he's very upfront and he loves spotlights, he replied, oh, you are the Messiah. He was right. Jesus is the Messiah, was the Messiah. But there is a problem that, and this catechetical or pedagogical passage of the disciples of Emmaus, they deal with this very strongly, with this image of Messiah. What is the Messiah? What is the characters of a Messiah? And we have at least two different figures. This is why Peter, right in the following this question, that Peter actually replied right. He was right in terms of wording. he chose the right word. You are the Messiah. So Jesus is the Messiah, that is fine. And the poor Jesus actually thought, okay, now I can tell you what's going to happen, because he didn't tell the fool until the top of the mountain. But now that you are at the top of the mountain, please go ahead and look at where we are going. So Jesus decided to share with his closest friends what is going to happen. And he tried 3 times. And it's very sad, actually, very, very sad, because he was not successful to get empathy from his friends about what's about to happen. He shared 3 times, I am going to suffer because of my choices. I am going to be tortured because of the choices I made. I am going to be in a bad position. I am going to be hell. So my life could be worse. He tried 3 times to develop some sort of empathy from his closest friends. And he couldn't, because the idea that his friends had about Messiah was a different one than what he is. This is why Peter was called right away Satan. So get a part of me, Satan, or devil. In Greek is diabolos, no? Which is the one who divides, or the thing that divides us. And you do know that you can't exorcise the devil. You can exorcise the demons, but not the devil. Satan is not exorcisable. You have to live with it and fight with it all the time. It's a very interesting structure in the narrative of the gospel. So demons are easily exorcised. So you can get rid of the demons or the impure spirits or whatever. But you can't do this with the devil, with the diabolos, with the Satan, with the accuser, the prosecutor. You have to deal with the prosecutor. You have to fight him or her or it. But why Peter was actually accused of being the devil? Because Peter was with the wrong idea about the Messiah. Do you remember what the problem was with the Mary and Cleophas? The text shows us that they were not blind. They were prevented to recognize that person as Jesus. So, and this word recognition is very important. They were seeing Jesus, this person. They were not blind, but they are having problems to recognize that person as the Messiah, as the Jesus. And the text also tells us why. What was the expectation from the disciples? Do you remember the text? Who they were expecting to be the Messiah? Savior, but what means Savior? Exactly. Savior is a very fluid word. It's good. It's important to be very specific. Yeah. What they were expecting is not changing the system. The system was okay. What was the problem? I am not the one in power. They were just jealous. They were just envy to be mean. They wanted to be mean. They wanted to be the oppressors. They wanted to be in the throne. They wanted to be the king. They didn't want a different king. This is why this word king is tricky, very tricky. And that is also because it's not a word, it's an image. There is a huge baggage when we say king. And sorry for you Britain people. I'm not British, so I'm allowed to say that with no guilty. But there is a baggage when we say this word. When we say monarchy, there is a lot of baggage. They wanted, the system is Romans are on top, oppressing, the poor people at the bottom, what they wanted. They did not want the system to change. The system was okay. They just wanted to shift places. They wanted to be the oppressors. They wanted privilege. And if it goes back to the Gospel of Mark, which is in the Matthew and Luke as well, when Jesus are saying, I am going to suffer, so the questions were, who gets what? Who gets what? Can I be your prime minister or your personal assistants? So can I have actually the question is, I will have privilege. I will be part of the 20% of the population who can eat, can dress, can drink fancy wines, and having no issues about breakfast, lunch, and dinner, or education. Can I be this group? That was what they wanted, actually. This is why the Gospels are very critical to the apostles, the males one. If you want to be a good Christian, you look at the Gospels, you make a list of everything that the apostles did and do the opposite. So this is a good way to be a good Christian. Of course, the apostles are in heaven, they are saved. Thanks God we have hope. So we are there as well. Despite being criticized, they were not expelled from the community. Despite being maybe wrong, they were not expelled from the communion. So they are there. They are there as well. But they are not good models, because they wanted to have power over, just like the emperor. That was the problem when people left Egypt. So they left Egypt, but Egypt never left them. So this is why Moses needed to be corrected by his father-in-law. Father-in-laws are important. They are good consciousness in the Bible. So this is the problem that we are facing in the journey to Emmaus. This is why methodology, how we do things, are important. The Gospel of Luke and the Act of Apostles, they are all built up through the word hodos, way, path, and how we do things. It is only in the Gospel of Luke, where we get our passage, that we have 10 chapters that people traveling from Galilee to Jerusalem. 10 chapters. Out of 24, 10 chapters is actually the method. It's about methodology. It's about the way, the path. In Mark and Matthew, Jesus in one chapter is in Galilee, the next chapter he's in Jerusalem, but not Luke. And it's interesting, I encourage you to read actually 9:51 to 10:52, which was this 10 chapter, the 9:52 to 19, I think 51. This 10 chapter is all about methodology, so how to do things to be a disciple, and to be close or closest to what Jesus wanted to us. All of the main content of the Gospel of Luke is there. And this passage of Emmaus is drawn from that 10 chapters. But anyway, they were expecting the king. They were expecting the Messiah that we schizophrenically do from Advent to Christmas. We are kind of very schizophrenic people sometimes. So during Advent, we read Isaiah 1-39. And this is what the disciples were reading, Isaiah 1-39. The King, the Son of David, the Prince of Peace, the one who will take over the power and make everything okay to certain people. They were not wrong. They were reading the Bible, that's fine. The problem is they were not actually listening to Jesus. They were not actually seeing Jesus. This is quite interesting. especially Luke and John, which is the gospel of the sea. So Jesus sees people, so I see you. But the disciples had problems to see Jesus because the picture they had or the expectations they carried on was not that name. Jesus was out of curve, and the disciples were not happy about that. This is why Peter was violent. This is why Judah betrayed him. This is why everybody else was asking, because why don't you do anything to actually take the power, not change the system, take the power. So that means the disciples were not concerned about people suffering. When they went to listen to Jesus in the field, and there is lunchtime, what was the response from the disciples? I don't care. Send them away. It's not my problem. I didn't invite them. They came by their own will. So why should I care? And this is hard. In Gospel of Matthew, there is a passage about the women screaming, making a scene because her daughter was ill. And what was the reaction of the apostles? The same word, send her away because she's annoying. She's screaming. So women are annoying. Let's send them away. They don't know how to behave. There are plenty of other texts about that. So the disciples didn't care until the end, maybe. After maybe they started to care because Jesus were murdered and blah blah. But then this is maybe why Jesus was very upset about this. So we were expecting a prophet who will actually take over the throne and make lives, well, better for me, not for everybody. That was the mindset of them. Maybe this is why they are not recognizing that person as Jesus. Maybe. It might be the other explanation. So Jesus was glowing, or Jesus was changing body, or whatever. There are lots of supernatural preaching about that. Maybe. Again, we were not there. But scripturally speaking, that in terms of narrative, the problem is the picture they had did not fit the person alongside that. It's a different thing. And this is why image is very important. When we say things, what comes to mind? What image do we have? When we say Franciscans to people, we should ask them, how do you picture Franciscans? How do you picture Francis? And I'm sure if you go to the OFM, the Capuchinos and the conventuals, they will draw a different picture of Franciscans with different robes and different attitudes, because they need Francis to fit their own agenda. This is why images are important. This is the same thing about Jesus. This is the same thing about the church. What is the image of the church we have? The common image is Jesus is the head and everybody is the body. But you do know that this is one image, only found in the first chapter of Ephesians and first chapter of Colossians. There is no such image in anywhere else in the New Testament. The main image of church is a circle. Where is Christ? Here. Christ is not here, and you are there as the body. This is not the main image of the church. So this is why images are important to carry on. And it challenges us a lot. And this is why the people in power turned this word, image, imagination, as a synonym of lie. And sometimes we do this with our kids. We want to be polite. We don't want to call you a liar. So what we say, sorry, you are imagining things. Because of course we are middle class. We are very polite. And we don't want to call you a liar. So we use a fancy word. No, you are imagining things. And imagination becomes a bad word. So imagination becomes an instrument of the powerful ones to disqualify you. Us. So, but image is very, very much important. What was the image that Jesus actually is trying to share? This is why he got mad. So people with no brain. In English is, I don't know in English this word, necius, is that word in English? What's the it's the verse 25 of the Luke 13. I don't know if I can remember now the English word. But in Greek is someone with no brain, anencephalus, or with no idea. Jesus was very upset about that. So why you don't understand? Because you were with me, you saw what we did. It's not under me, and there is a 14 to 66. So many chapters in the book of Isaiah showing a different Messiah, which is the suffering servant. This is the Messiah who Jesus is. And this is the Messiah who is imagined throughout the most part of the Gospels. But again, because we and people before us, we are fancy people who want to be rich, we just take this one passage, which is from Palm Sunday, that connects Jesus to David, and we make this the main thing, the main flag. Hosanna, Hosanna, the Son of David is coming. And now Jesus is David. This is one particular thing, the whole gospel, against everything else. Everything else is against this phrase. But we choose that phrase and that image. And we keep imagining Jesus as following David. What was the disciples' image? They wanted a David, which was a horrible person. There is this song, I don't know if in English it exists, but in the Latin languages we sing. So when the Spirit of God moves in me, I do things like King David. So I jump like King David. I move like King David. I sing like King David. I dance like King David. But in our parishes we should, let's continue. When the Spirit of God moves in me, I kill the husband of the wife I want like King David. When the Spirit of God moves in me, I rob her. I steal land from my neighbors like King David. When the Spirit of God moves in me, I keep quiet and I support my rapist son who raped my daughter like King We should keep moving like King David. King David did lots of things. And maybe he was a nice person when he was 12 or 15, I don't know. But monarchy, again, sorry about you British people, but monarchy is portrayed in the Old Testament as the original sin in chapter 3 of Genesis. When you replace God into a person, which is 1 Samuel 8, the whole chapter is about it, you committed this is the original sin. There was the reflection from the exile from the Palestinian people who stayed during the exile. That was their response. What we did wrong, we disobeyed God. We replaced God by a person. And this is the consequence. We are in a shithole. We are with the shit in the Psalm 69. We are with the shit in our neck. This is the Psalm 69. It starts like that. The shit is in my neck. This is the consequence of choosing a person over God. So because we didn't listen, we disobeyed. This is the original sin from one group. Of course, there is another group who are saying why we are here. It's because we disobeyed the law of God, which is a different response. But the response or the reaction that Jesus were expecting is they understand he is the suffering Messiah. And if you read Isaiah 40 to 66, we will see how different it is from the monarchy or the King David's frame. This is why Jesus was so upset with the disciples. So why you don't understand that? And sometimes we fall in that patriarchal and imperialistic pattern of expecting someone, usually male, usually with power, and usually rich, to solve the problems. In our preaching, sometimes in our imagining of Jesus and his doing, the women with bleeding problems, how she was healed. And again, in the Bible, the method is important. Method is content. Method is theology. So how this woman was healed? How is the usual preaching about that? So that means, who healed her? Yeah, there is again, we are very non-processual persons. It's one or the other. Some very conservative people, the ordinary preaching is Jesus healed her because she touched the robe. But then there are the other side that says, no, she did it. Jesus has nothing to do with that. She just healed herself. But actually, how she was healed? What was the method?
But by being connected.
Her faith.
Again, faith is a very fluid word. Faith means whatever I want to mean. So let's be concrete. What happened? What was the method? How do you cook rice? It's not say cooking rice. This is replying faith. How do we cook rice? So what we do, what she did, and what Jesus did. So first of all, she was not an unpowerful woman. This is the mindset of people. Oh, the women in the Bible are so excluded, unpowered, outcasted. No, she had power. She was struggling for 12 years. That means she had power. She was a powerful woman. And she has resilience, which is a very important quality of a community. So be resilient. Never, despite the odds, you do not give up. What else she did? She stood, and then she moved. She listened. Oh, there is someone who can do something. So she listened, and she moved feet. She moved her ass to go. She was not passive, expecting anything. And then there is a tricky thing about the crowd. There was a crowd around Jesus. Who was that crowd? The usual scholarship about Mark is when you encounter this word, the ochlos, which is a crowd. Crowd is a problem in the Gospel of Mark. This is the main scholarship about the Gospel of Mark. I was teaching in Cuba once, and we did a Bible drama with this passage. Do you know the Bible drama technique? So we started, we do once a drama, and people are, repeating what happened, and we did again. And at a certain point, I asked them, let's stop here. Would you change anything here? And it was amazing how a group of women took off all the males surrounding Jesus, replaced the two women, and suddenly all those women surrounding Jesus were actually friends of her. So who helped her to get into Jesus? Because the apostles were preventing people to get into Jesus. So they were actually fighting the apostles. So this woman got into Jesus because she had friends. She was not alone, which is why maybe she stood up 12 years, because she was not alone. She was in community. So how healing happens? It is the community. It is the resilience. It is the conspiring process. We need to reclaim this word to our spirituality, conspiring. We are a conspiring community, or we should be. So this included changed my scholarship about Mark. So it changed the way I see the word ocholos in the Gospels. And it was done by a bunch of women who they are not theologians, they don't know Greek, they never went to a PhD or something, but they changed the way to approach the healing process. And this word is important, process. This is the suffering servant Messiah figure. It is about process. So everything is in everybody and everything is involved in the healing, in the changing. The community is absolutely important. This is the suffering servant Messiah. And then, but this text, what this text is telling us, we need to choose what we read in the Bible. There is an agenda. And also, this text is telling us this methodological tip that reminding us that the gospel, the good news, is not a discourse. The good news is a person. It's Jesus. Jesus is the good news. But Jesus is a figure in dispute. This is why we need to choose what Jesus we are following, which kind of Jesus we are trying to be. Because this is our duty, to look like Jesus, to be Jesus, to everybody else. This is why Baptists, we wear Christ's vest. This is the words of the baptism. So choosing is a very important part of our expressing good news in the world. So what we choose and how we express also it is important. I am here doing a speech, but this is not a good way to do that. Yesterday we did a bit, we were better, so we did in group. We shared. This is a good method to do things. So this is second part of when we share. The first part is actually sharing stories, how healing or how changing happens. In theology starts by sharing stories. Theology does not start by doing lectures or reading Aquinas or St. Augustine or Athanasius or whatever. Theology starts by sharing stories, by asking people, how are you? And actually replying this honestly. This is how theology starts. This is the process. And then theology moves into, let's choose the right texts. Let's choose the text that Jesus is. Jesus, and should not be difficult for us Christians. So we know Jesus. We know what he did. So in what universe Jesus looks like David or a king? He does not. This is our twisted way of wanted to be king, or wanted to be powerful, or wanted to rule because of the patriarchal and imperial devil in our minds and in our glasses sometimes. But this is not what the Gospels and even Paul's actually shared. So Jesus is one kind of Messiah we should stick with, which is the suffering servant, not the King David. And I know this is very hard to swallow, because all of our ecology is about Jesus the King, the Almighty, the all-powerful, and blah blah. Even though within all of our anthropology, and we read it all the time, and it's again in the Lambeth Call on human dignity, we are all worthy ontologically, because we are made as an image and likeness of God. But when we go to the Common Book of Prayer, there is a whole bunch of we unworthy servants, we unworthy people, and then we pray and we bow kneels and we put our hearts on it. Sometimes our ecology, our prayers just mess up with our theology, and it breaks our theology. So, and some songs, in my parish, I have to sing a song that everything is wrong and God needs to build up me again. And I keep saying, how much shit work this God did? Why he or she made me broken? Then nothing is good. Nothing is good here. Everything must change. So he is a bad worker. He's a horrible worker. But we keep saying this sometimes, and we really don't think. And it's a lie. So we were made worthy, naturally, or ontologically, if you want to use this word. So this is why this text of the Gospel of Emmaus is so important. But until there, so we share stories. We ask, we care. We are cared. We choose the right texts in the Bible to follow Jesus, the suffering Messiah. But it is quite interesting in the text. Those things don't open the eyes of the disciple. It is not enough. So it's good to read the Bible. It's good to study the Bible. It's good to do therapy, go in groups and say, how are you? And share and heal. But it does not help us to recognize that person as Jesus. Still, the Bible just warms the heart, gives us capacity for resilience. This is why the Bible is so important. It gives us capacity for being more resilient. But what actually changed and opened the eyes? It's the last part of this pedagogical path, which is then after the break. So, but you will share some stories about changing. So some stories about how communities changed and how community changes. But the story says, so what helped to open the eyes? Everything together. So sharing stories, reading the Bible correctly, interpreting the Bible in a Jesus way, not into the apostles' way, the Jesus way, Jesus' eyes, this suffering Messiah eyes. But the most important thing is what happens at the end. What happens at the end? Do you remember? So there is an invitation. So there is an invitation. So welcoming is a very much important part of recognizing Jesus and recognizing the good news and expressing good news. Welcoming. So we need to invite. Then we need to share a table, which of course in the 2nd century is already the Eucharistic rituals, but maybe during the Jesus time or Paul's time, it was actually sharing meals, so feeding people, sharing resources, all resources, intellectual resources, material resources. So sharing resources is very important. And this word sharing is a Christian one. I do understand when we do fundraising, we use the word giving. So please give and give and give and give. But this is not a Christian word. So the Christian word is sharing. Because when I give, I don't have connections because I'm giving. And it's very capitalistic. So I have a property, so I have this property, and I'm giving it. So then I take this property and I give it to you. So there is no longer, I have no relationship with this anymore, because now it's yours. And I need to buy another one. But if I share, so then we need a relationship, because we need to agree. So you use this time, I use that time. How can we use together? So both of us have the resource. Sharing makes relationships and commitments, which is agape. The other thing is to understand that you are part of the healing process. Maybe this is why Jesus disappeared, because the disciples understood that now the church or the community is the gospel, because Jesus is the community. What is the first sacrament of Jesus resurrected? It's the community. When 2 or 3 are gathered on my name, I will be among them. So this is a sacrament. It's a sign. So the community is now Jesus. So building up communities is a very important way to express and to live up the gospel, so Jesus. But again, it's very important who Jesus is, which kind of Jesus we want, or we are promoting, or preaching, or proclaiming. And this image is very interesting in the canon, and also in our spirituality. What happened in 50 years that from this we became this? So what happened? In that period of maybe 50, 60 years in terms of canon, the New Testament canon. So how Jesus from a community, brother, ordinary person became that other thing. And sometimes we keep promoting the other thing. We speak about the first thing, but we promote the other thing. It's very schizophrenic. So mental health is important in nowadays. It's not about nostalgia. It's not about, the past. No, but how we keep doing this image. And again, image are important. It's good that we do this in kind of a circle, not one after the. And architecture is important. So the way you organize the architecture of this meeting is theology. We can't do a circle because, of course, we need a screen. Maybe we need someone here, but we are not in a classroom in a bank system way. And we should keep doing this because architecture is very, very important. Where we put things, how we handle things, and how we organize ourselves, how we dress, how we want to be called, or whatever. And this transvestite Jesus is very problematic in a sense, because it is distant, it is rich, it has subjects, it has power over, it has privilege, and so only a few people can actually approach it. And this is what happened in the Old Testament when Solomon kidnapped God. There is a text, a very interesting text on Deuteronomy. It's Deuteronomy 23, 22 something. When you are in the war and you are in the camp outside, and you need to do your physical needs, the number 2. What do? you have to go out of the camp. You don't do in the camp. You have to go out of the premises of the camp. But you take what is this thing that we have? Shovel. You take a shovel with you, and you go out of the camp. You dig a hole. You do your needs there, and you cover the hole. Why? Because God will walk among you, and He can't go into your shit. So two things important here. One is very basic public hygienic. So the Bible is very concerned about hygiene, health, body health. So concreteness is very important. But also, what is the theology here? Who is God?
Doesn't have anything to do with shit.
No, but then who is God? God is the one who visits you. He goes. It's not you that goes to Him. He goes to you. He will visit you. He walks among us. He is with us. This word again, with, is important. But then when Solomon built up the temple, what happened? Oh, but then you, of course, you do have this 12 tribes. One of them didn't got land. What did they get? The ark. What is the ark? The ark was the symbol of God. What was the service of the Levites? Was to pilgrimage. They, with the ark, they visited all the tribes because God is walking among yourselves. This is a very important theology because up to now, God just walked in the palaces. God's just like the kings and pharaohs and rich people, not poor people. But then there is now this God, this amazing revolutionary rebellion God who actually visits you in your home. So have a meal with you and goes where you are, independently where you are. But then Solomon built up the temple and then he kidnapped the ark. He kidnapped the God. He changed the theology. And he makes God a privilege. And then nobody anymore could visit God. Nobody. Just one person, once a year, could visit the actual God. Nobody else had access to God. And I don't understand why people, I do understand, but it's hard to keep understanding that why people love Solomon and David and whatever, the monarchy. You know that story, beautiful story that people use to say how Solomon is wise. You remember that story, no? 2 women, 2 babies, 1 baby died or were murdered, and the one of the mothers who killed the baby took the other baby, and then there is a dispute in the morning who is the baby. The baby belongs to whom? And what was the decision? Cut the baby. Then what happens? The real mother said, no, keep it. And then Solomon knew who was the real mother. But what is the problem with this? This is not a good text. This is not a text to compliment Solomon. This is our colonial, imperial, Egyptian mindset saying that. Because everybody wants to be Solomon in a palace with wine and comfort and fireplaces and etc. This text is a criticism to Solomon. Why? If the mother hadn't said anything, what would happen? The baby would be cut. Why? Because the king has the power of life over life and death. What is the problem? Nobody should have the right of life and death but God. But actually, the king has the power over life and death. He will be obeyed. Just like the soldier when killed Urias obeyed David. He was sent to kill someone, and he did. Because the king has this power. So this is a text, but again, this is about how we choose to interpret. And again, which image we have about God, or King, or Jesus. This is not a text to compliment Solomon, not at all. He is wise. We have acknowledged that. That was a clever solution. Of course, he is wise. We can't take him. We can't take it from him. He is very wise. But there is a problem with this. So monarchy is a sin in the Bible. This is why making Jesus king is a problematic sin theology. He is not. And in the last gospel, the Gospel of John, he made very clear, so please, we are friends. I am not your master. Call me friend, phileo. This is what we should call. We should call ourselves. So we are phileo. We are not. I'm not mastering anybody. I'm not king of anybody. I don't want that. The whole Gospel of John is about it, and it's about to criticize people with privilege. The Gospel of John is fighting the Timothy letter, who is institutionally shutting up women, cutting women from ministry, and implementing the pater-families structure within the church. This is Timothy. And the Gospel of John is fighting this letter. And also the Gospel of John is fighting Ignatius of Antiochia and Clemens from Rome, who are about to organize the monoepiscopacy as a male solo thing. This is why the first sign of the Gospel of John, which is kind of interesting because poor Jesus is kind of stupid in this account. So who is Mary in that passage? Translation is important here. So Mary is bossing home. And servants. But when we, again, when you imagine this scene, how do you imagine the servants? Who are they? So how are they dressed? What they are doing? What was their job? You know that in Greek there are two words for servant. One is doulos, which is maybe the waitress or the driver or whatever, the slave. And there is diakonos, the deacons. Mary is bossing the deacons, not the doulos. So that means, and in the end of the first century, church exists. That is already the three ordained ministers, episcopos, presbyters, and deacons. So Mary is bossing Jesus, poor guy. The clock was broken because he said, "Oh, this is not my time." I picture Mary said that, "I'm so sorry, you have to change your clock because if it's not time, it is time. Do it." So I don't care. But then she's bossing the deacons. So there is a church structure already. So who is Mary?
Bishop.
Yes. So there is a woman who is the boss in the church, who is the episcopos in the church. And she is supervising. She knew that the wine went out. She was very nosy. But she knew that wine ended up. So she was doing a supervision thing in the party. And she was fixing what was wrong. And she was organizing people. She didn't do by herself. And this is a good model of episcopacy as well. She sees things. She understands what's happening. She sees what's wrong. She makes a strategy. Even if it means to fight Jesus, his Savior son. And the shipmate things happen. This is a good model of oversight of episcopacy. And this is the fight against the mono-episcopacy going on in the second century, end of first century, beginning of the second century. So this is why imagery is very, very, very important. And it is the story of Emmaus is absolutely crucial for us to return us to the community again, but to the Jesus community, not to the imperial community or to the imperial mode of community, which was gaining in space and space and space in the church, which actually won. And this is why the religious lives appeared in the second century. So when the monasteries start to appearing, it is out of a protest against the Church of Rome. And the religious life is portraying a different model of being church, of being community. And since the beginning, the religious lives made very clear to the institutional church, here you don't have power. Very good boundaries. We obey you, we are connected to you, we whatever, but this is our territory. And here we do things differently. We try to follow Jesus, the suffering servant, not the emperor, not that one. This religious life is a very revolutionary and a very political organization against the empire. And I think we should not ever forget that when we live our spirituality as Benedictines, Franciscans, or whatever. I'm not sure about the Dominicans, sorry. Maybe now they changed, but not in the beginning. So what we need to bear in mind that. Then this is why in this passage of Emmaus, so the community, the sharing, the welcoming a stranger opens the eyes. And not only opens the eyes, it boosts your energy. It gives you bravery to actually do things you ordinarily you don't do. Not worry,
Sorry.
no, don't worry. It happens. You should take it.
This is the joy.
Yes. So and then this passage is quite interesting because you in the way that this is constructed, as you know, in the beginning they were sad, not recognizing Jesus, running out of the community with no hope and with wrong mindset. At the end of the passage, and this is day, it's in the beginning of the day, and then in the end of the passage, it's evening. They were happy, they were with courage, they recognized Jesus, and they had the right mindset about the Messiah, and they were heading back to the community, even though it's night. This is the Psalm 139. So the night is not night, the night is not dark. It's a very beautiful psalm. This passage is connected to this Psalm 139. And because the God or Jesus is everywhere also, it's a very good intertextual connection. So this is a way of, so Budi and after he will share how this community, how this putting in action our mindset helps us to be in the Word and with the Word. And again, this connecting word is important. So we are with the Word. We are not only in the Word, only because we do not belong to this Word, but we are with this Word to change it and to change ourselves as well. So this is how we express and maybe live up the good news, what we call good news, what we call Jesus. And let's be very clear about who Jesus is to us. And who Jesus is to us means how he dresses, which kind of shoes he has, how he sits, where he sits, what is his tone, voice tone. We need to imagine that. Otherwise, we will be portraying again the image above, not the image below. And it takes time for us because all our hymnology and maybe church structures sometimes does not help us. It's against this kind of mindset. Or sometimes our own blood families, structures, and communities. That this is a good reminder for us to fight it, to go against the way, to actually keeping portraying this community. This community, which is a good news. Or this is what we call good news anyway. Is that okay so far? Or it is too much? Like this. Yeah, process is a very important word. Everything happens in process. It's not like that. And we need to acknowledge different ministries to the process. So the women, the women with bleeding issues, she has a ministry. So her friends, they have a ministry. Jesus, he has a ministry. So the pavement, the road, it has a ministry. So let's also, as good Franciscans, not forget how nature and how geography plays an important role in expressing good news. So the earth, the geography is also part of the process. This is why localization, when we interpret the Bible, is very, very much important. So if you go to this multiplication of loaf passage, it's quite interesting because it's done in the middle of the city and the countryside. Jesus is in the middle ground. And it says something because he is in the middle ground. When that woman was about to be stoned, he was in the temple. And you remember what he was doing. He was writing in the soil. This is an important geographic indication where he was. There is just one place in the temple where he can't do that, which is he was with the outcasted people who can't go in further into the temple. So it's a geographic indication, a landscape indication. So where Jesus stands, with whom Jesus stands. And of course, he stands with many people, but in Latin America, we used in the 70s to see, oh, the Jesus movement was a movement of the poor people. It served us in terms of discourse because it was interesting, but it's not quite true. So in the Jesus movements, he had lots of different people, including women paying the bills. We should not forget that. We had some women paying his bills. And some people forget it, actually. Because again, our patriarchal and our so male eyes prevents us to see other characters and other players. So we need to be less male eye. How can I say that in English? We need to be less male focused. Of course, the males are important. I'm not disqualifying our sex, but there are lots of other players, and it needs to be acknowledged. So this is the good news also. And this is a process. It's not about Jesus. It's not about the poor people. It's about the process, the community. So community actually made the change. And maybe this is why when religious lives started in the 2nd century, maybe they started as a community. Even Saint Benedict, he wanted to be alone. He couldn't, because people were drawn to him. And even though he was not a good person, he had to manage. You know that the community tried to kill him because he was probably not a good figure to live with. But he had to live with, he had to manage, because community actually changed things. It's not one solo person, male, blah, blah. This is the model of the empire. This is the model of the colonizer. And we need to get past that. And I'm sure all of you understand this decolonizing discourse and problems that we are facing nowadays as well, in our theology, but now also in our ways of being church or being religious brothers and sisters. And also what it means to be brother and sister. It's a very also difficult thing to do sometimes, how to do that. How we get past hierarchy, or how do we understand the hierarchy as just a way of ministering, not a way of having power over. This is sometimes difficult. How we get past our titles. I'm not ordained, so I do have a title. Sorry.
No.
You are just a king. So I'm not ordained, so then I don't have a church title. Maybe my title in the church is brother. I used to say brother. So when my church in Brazil was discussing same-sex marriage or something, so the Archbishop in time pulled together a team of theologians. And suddenly I saw my name in the website. I was not communicated that I was part of this thing. But suddenly I was checking the website, I saw my name with among about 17 other people. And there was a Dr. Paulo Ueti, blah, 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 blah. And then I called my Archbishop to the first. Please, you should have consulted me if I wanted to be in this thing. But anyway, if you think I can't contribute, I do contribute. But please get rid of the doctor in front of my name. And he was a bit upset. He didn't know because everybody has it. So then I cost $100 an hour because you are hiring me as a consultant. If you are hiring me as a consultant, you can keep the doctor, but my fee is $100 per hour. So please put it in your budget. Then I go to the meetings and I write things and I will speak up. Otherwise, if you are asking me to share my knowledge, to share my expertise as a member of the church, my Baptist name is Paulo. Get rid of the doctor. I don't need it. And I'm so sorry, Archbishop, you can't undoctor me. So, if there is a doctor, or if there is not a doctor, I'm still a doctor. And I don't have issues about that. I know my identity, so I passed age to need it. And it was a huge problem because then he took out all the doctors. And then the other people became upset about that. And then when we were drinking, he said, you put me in a bad position. I didn't put you anywhere, Bishop. This is your doing. I asked to say my doctor, not everybody else. So this is you solve with whatever you want. But this is an issue also within the church. Doctor is not a church title. It's an academic title. If I am at the university, I don't like it, but that is fine. So I go out in the pulpit and someone can 5 minutes say my CV, which is boring, stupid. That's okay, even if I don't like it. But I am at the university setting, that's fine. But in a church setting, in a community setting, I am a brother who happens to have some knowledge and I can share. And I'm obliged to share because I am in the community. It's not my choice even to share. It's my commitment to share. But I do not need to do that. If I was a reverend, that's fine. So you can call me reverend. This is a church title. That's okay. But because I'm not ordained, so if you can call me something, call me or my name or Paulo. That is fine. But how do we deal with this position where we are also in our own communities and within our church structures, because it is difficult sometimes. I do know bishops who is very keen, so you call me your grace. And it's very funny because in Spanish, and I do that, but in Spanish and in Portuguese, your grace is female. So everything else in terms of concordance should be done in female way. So they get mad. I can call you your grace. I should say, because in Portuguese, your grace is tyrant. It's a female way to say. So you are tyrant, but in a female way. If he was a woman, in terms of writing. And I do that on purpose. So that if you want me to call you, I can call you your grace. But then I studied Portuguese. I am very good in Portuguese. So that I need to follow the rules. So then everything's gonna be female. Sorry about that. Otherwise, but then I like my bishop. My bishop is a good one. He used to quote to us the Saint Augustine, one of the Saint Augustines. He said bad things, but he said lots of good things as well. But Saint Augustine, he used to say that to you, for you, I am the bishop. But with you, I am Mauricio. And you must be very clear about that. So to you or for you, I am your bishop, and we should have this relationship. But I am not only for you or to you, I am also with you. And then with you, my name is Mauricio, so call me Mauricio. I don't need anything else. So how do we deal with that? And this is related to Jesus. Again, because we have this whole and pluralistic titles: Almighty, Prince, Lord. Lord is the worst one. Lord. In Latin America, when you call someone Lord, which is Señor, it relates to slavery time. When the white male and also lady, Señora, this was the owner of the farm and had slaves, and they are the lords or the ladies. So language, image is very important on that. So how do we feel about it? Okay, so we can stop now, so that's too much.
Yes.
Then we can go for a break. Is that okay so far?
Yeah.
So then after the break, so Buzzy will start with some sharing, and then before the end, I will do some summarizing on our conversation. So we will do a summarizing in our conversation with the Guatemalan bowl as well. Is that okay?
Once again, I don't think I'm very delicate and very, how to say, nice lecture as Paulo. It's uncomparable. So I'll try to do my best. So because Paulo said that now we need to see how all the things that we discussed yesterday and today in the morning should come out there in the world and doing what we think is the good news, what we think that we need to convey to the people, to the community, and be with the community. I think it's very important as well, as he said, that it's be with the community. I am with you. We are with them. We are together. So for that reasons, in our work in Franciscan International, we are trying as much as possible to work together with the Franciscans, not to work for the Franciscans, but to work together with the Franciscans as much as possible. Of course, there are certain things that we have to represent the Franciscans at the international level, but as much as we try to do is to let them speak by themselves, to let them to testimony by themselves, and they can also get the feeling, what does it mean to work at the international level? What does it mean we have to struggle to get our voice heard? First, to be heard, which is very difficult, and then after that, to get our concern addressed according to what we need, not according to what they want us to be. So that's the whole process that we have to really try to work together over the years. We cannot claim that we have the 100% success, no, but as he said as well, the process is important. So the way toward that destination is important. So we have to go to that. So that's why I completely agree with him as well. The methodology is very important. the methodology is very, very important because people will feel that they are not abandoned, that we are with them. And we understand that the success is not only coming from us, but from a bigger network, bigger efforts together. So yesterday, Chris mentioned about our visit to Solomon Islands. So it was really, really important for us just to respond to the call of our friars, of our brothers and sisters in Solomon Island. So the story, we have 2 persons from Solomon Island here, so they are the one that calling us to be with them, to work together. The journey started when Chris came to Geneva about 6-7 years ago, right, Chris? And then we had a conversation with him, and he mentioned about the effort that was done before between Franciscan Internationals and our SSF, the SSF in Solomon Island in 2011, I think. In 2011, we organized an activity together in Solomon Island, inviting the members of the SSF, and trying also to bring the concerns of the Franciscans and the community where they are to the United Nations. We did a report because most of the things that we do at the United Nations is providing report, means information. But the report that was submitted were not followed up diligently, let's put it that way, because of the different reasons that we have. So we feel that there is a need to do more. And I still remember when we had a discussion with Chris, he shared with us the issue of a place called Hutambu. It's a very nice, but where is it? And I guess many of the people in Geneva, they even cannot locate where is Solomon Island. It's somewhere. Oceania is a mystery, right? A big mystery. Well, are there countries over there, Solomon Island, even to locate Papua New Guinea, which is very big, it's still very difficult for them. Of course, Australia and New Zealand are very obvious, but not the small islands, Nauru, Vanuatu, Kiribati, etc., etc. It's not in our imperialistic colonial or this type of business way, because if they don't provide profits, we should not take into account what's happening with them. It's just very, how many populations, very small. So that way of thinking is there, has been there, and we need to really address, because this is the real concerns of the people, the real concerns of the Franciscans. So Chris spoke about the fact that the high school, the Anglican high school in Hutambu, nearby Hutambu, was flooded. So that was the key word that came to my mind. And we had a little bit of discussion why it was flooded, why the school was flooded, so that the water, the well, was covered with water coming from the mountains. And then we were informed it's because of the logging. Logging activities that has been in the country for decades, but yet there is no real advocacy at the international level. So we started to work, to discuss, and we started to identify what kind of advocacy we can do together, once again, together, so that this issue will receive the attentions from the international community. And we work together to prepare some, let's say, exchange on possibilities. We identify one of the mechanisms at the United Nations, because at the UN we have so many mechanisms, and then it's not always easy to work with all those mechanisms, these UN bodies. Therefore, we need to work together to identify what can be the best way. So that's why the mechanism called Universal Periodic Review, in which all the UN member states are reviewed by the UN Human Rights Council on their human rights reports. And of course, people are excited to make reports regarding the United States, regarding Japan, regarding Indonesia, but there are not too many reports regarding Solomon Islands, because the international organizations, once again, they don't have the resources, they don't have attention to work in Solomon Island. So it was also an opportunity for us to contribute. And then we have a series of discussions. unfortunately, it was during the COVID period as well, right? So it was another layers of challenge, but our principle, we shall overcome. Let's do it. Challenges are there, but we are there to work together to respond to the challenges. We could find our partner, that is the Dominican. Sorry, Paulo. No, I'm joking.
I like that. Now,
The Dominicans that are also very present in Solomon Island, and they have the same concerns. So we started to have an exchange and try to see what we can do together. We look at the issue of logging. The main issue is logging, but because we work together with the SSF, Dominican sisters, Dominican brothers, Dominican lay, so we can look at this issue from different angles, from different approaches, from the human right, but from different approaches. And it was so beautiful to see that from one issue in which Solomon Island has been really focusing logging as part of the main source of economy, unfortunately. And then we can see that the impact is not only on the environment, of course the environment, that's why the flood came, of course the water, the streams that are affected, but in fact there are some other impacts. For example, I heard the first time the terminology house girls, because the loggers, they come from either outside Guadalcanal, outside the island, sometimes they come from the Philippines, from Indonesia, from China, from other countries, and they are male workers, only male workers. And by saying that, you see all the consequences, no? And then they stay temporarily in a house, they need helpers, and it happens that the helpers should be girls. And then you have the girls helpers, very vulnerable, and then of course it's exploitations, but it's also further to sexual exploitation. And sometimes there are cases also of what they call as marriage, which when we came to Solomon Island, I understood it. In fact, it was not legal civil marriage, but it's an agreement sometimes between family and the loggers by providing two sacks of rice, so that, or that sort of symbolic things, they are married. But when the loggers went out, bye-bye. So that issue, and also the issue of easy money for the loggers coming from the community, because when you work in the logging companies, the local community male, they will receive money as well as the payment, and instead of using the money to empower the economy of the family, there were some reports that the man will buy alcohol, enjoy the money by buying alcohol, because it's easy money, something new. I got the power, and then I can buy alcohol. Once they buy alcohol, there are reports as well that the domestic violence increase. So it's very interesting to see that from the issue of logging, there are so many other impacts around that issue and how to address that. So for that reason, we had series of discussions with Zoom, thanks to Zoom that we could have a series of discussions, and a series of discussions that include also to understand this very complicated human rights system and how to use it, how to use that very simple things for our objective. And we could have a report, and then we submit it, and the whole process started from distance. Unfortunately, we could not bring any friars from Solomon Island to Geneva, nor the Dominican, but we did it. And it was very interesting that many of our recommendations, we call it recommendations, were taken very seriously by the UN, by other states, many. So almost all the recommendations with regard to environments, with regard to logging and impact of logging to human rights were taken from the work of the Franciscans and the Dominicans in Solomon Island. So in a way, it's also very proud for us that we, small group working together, trying to be noisy, and we were heard, we were taken into account. And then the next step is to see how those recommendations are implemented in the country. Because recommendations are nice, it's UN documents, it's legal documents, but what's next? So that was also our homework. We take the challenge. So in October last year, Chris, myself, and some colleagues from the Dominican, we went back to Solomon Island, and thanks to Warwick, to Francis, we could really visit the communities in which we put on the report. For me, it was also personal conversion, no? Because we heard about the story, we heard about this thing, but when we come there, be with the community, looking at the real situations, looking at the impact, looking at the logs being compiled on the coastal area, and looking at the family that is affected, it moves you much more. It motivates you much more because you see it, you feel it, you talk to these people. It's not only about numbers, but it's about people. So it's really moving, and we try also to be accountable to them, because when we do advocacy, it's with them, on behalf of them. So we need to be accountable again to them. So that's why the questions that Chris mentioned yesterday was very powerful for us, very powerful. They said they've been visited by so many people, so many NGOs. So what's next? That's why we had good reflections on that, and we are trying to. It's not yet finished. It's on the process. Once in the process, because it's a journey. A journey. We know the destinations, or we know the destination that we expect, that the logging companies should stop cutting the trees, or if they do it, consult the people, respect the law, bring the profit to the people, the benefits to the people, not only for their own benefit. So we try to do that process. And we made a very short documentary, which is, I hope it's going to be interesting for you, in which we talk to the people, we talk to the Franciscans, we talk to the communities, and try to see what do they expect from us and what we can do together. So I'll put it on, it's only 4 minutes.
They are not coming here to finance the schools, even the roads, and the clinics. They only come here to take off the loans and go. Even the promises you made with them, they will not follow. Before, if you plant food, you will enjoy the food growing. Even the fish in the river, you can dive them and take them, but now you cannot. And even the locals, we wish to tie our greenhouses. Now there are no locals in the bush. Even the machines destroy them. So the difference before and now, before we enjoy everything in the bush. Now, no.
Solomon Islands is one of our strong areas. We've got something like maybe 60 or 70 brothers here, depending on what day of the week you do the counting. And we've been here now for 50 years, just over 50 years. I notice on my regular visits here, when people get together, there'll be a few issues they start talking about. And one was climate change, another one is logging. And these are issues that people are very aware of, but they don't seem to know what to do. For us to work with Franciscans internationally, and also working with Dominicans here, and also the Sisters of the Church has given us, I think, a good partnership to help begin to look at those issues and find some practical things we can do.
Since we are beginning to raise those issues, but many people like telling stories without asking them. And because they have seen the impact of what has affected their lives. So without asking what is the situation with logging here, but they begin to tell stories about themselves. Many places, not in only Borough Canal or places where I went to, but there are other locations and other islands where I didn't go to. I still hear the same complaints.
The community needs awareness and the government needs to support that. it's about protecting the people. And also not only because the loggers are interested in, just on the trees, and because they're interested in that, they also come to destroy our people.
In the villages we were at, well, the brothers are up and down the road from there. They're well known, so we're not people who have just dropped in to do something and flying away. So I hope that that will encourage us to keep a local connection there with that one, which I think is a very important part of the process. And I think one reason for taking it internationally, we've seen, is that the logging trade is international. It's not just a local domestic thing.
As a human rights NGO at the United Nations, Franciscan International can bring the issues faced by our partners to the attention of the international community. We raised the impacts of logging on human rights in Solomon Island during a process called the Universal Periodic Review, where the UN member states examine each other's human rights report. At the end of this process, the government made concrete commitments to improve the situation. However, our community visits to Guadalcanal made it clear that many of these have not been realized yet. We are now releasing a report with our key findings and concrete suggestions that will help us to push the government to honor the promises it has made.
I think we are all together in this to help find ways and solutions to help these people and this country.
So this is the journey that we start, and we don't know when we will finish. But it is a journey, it is a process. We are trying really as much as possible to help so that the government will understand that they have obligations. They need to commit to implement their obligations. And as you might know now as well, is that a part of the government and companies as the actors, Solomon Island becomes more and more important strategic place in the region. And one of the things that we observe is the presence of China. And of course, Solomon Island is very interesting in terms of resources, logging, wood, because if I'm not mistaken, 90% of the logs would be sent to China. There's a high need in China, or maybe also by the end of the day, such because China will process it and export it back to UK or to Switzerland or to Indonesia. So that's also the continuation. But the need of raw material is very high, and China is very much interested in the Pacific. Plus, China's presence in Solomon Island cannot be ignored. And when we were there, we see how many small stores are owned by the Chinese. And it's very, very obvious on your eyes, on our eyes. And even one of the things that I observed, personal observation, even there is a supermarket compound or business compound next to the airport, so that they have the border directly with the airport. So it's easy to escape, if something happened. So that's because of the racial riot happened several times in Guadalcanal and Solomon Island. So this is to show as well that in fact what we are doing is really trying to defend the people, the community, to involve them, and also try to be with them. We don't pretend that we have the solutions, but we are there to be in the process together with them, try to find the solutions together, try to challenge together. Now it becomes more and more clear for us that it's a bit like David against Goliath, although David is not a good person.
He was there.
He was there.
Yes.
Well, when David he was 12.
Yes.
So, but this is just to see in perspective, because Dominican, Franciscan, sister of the church, against this logging company, but behind you have big China power, and it cannot be ignored. But it doesn't mean that we have to give up. No, not at all. We will continue. We will continue to disturb them because we believe that we are doing it right. We believe that it's our mission as Franciscans to disturb, and try to find the solutions. And I was very much touched also by the young Franciscan SSF, but also TSSF, they are so much motivated. One of the commitment at the time to follow up is to enact some drama, some role play that they will bring also to the community, because sometimes the community will also agree that the logging take place because they don't know what will be the consequences. They don't know. And sometimes when you have the big failure, people coming from the power, people coming from the community, telling you something, it's difficult for you not to say yes. I mean, I have my own experience in this, Papua, etc. Because if there's power imbalance, and then it's difficult for you not to say yes. So you're conditioned. So you're not properly informed. So the consent you give sometimes is not the full consent. And we also heard about that story also from Solomon Island, from the community. And they will regret it afterward. Sometimes a bit too late, but still we need to work. So the SSF, the young SSF members committed to make some drama, like a small play, so that they can when they visit the communities in other islands, in Malaita or some other islands, so they can raise the awareness of the community on what can be the danger if we allow the logging activities to continue. I don't know how was the implementations. Maybe I can ask you, were there any follow-up on how to raise the awareness in different communities outside Guadalcanal regarding the logging? Maybe you can share, because we have the person here with Francis from Solomon Island.
Yeah, for that matter, we've been working very closely with the communities around our places where we live, and we could see that some changes coming up, taking place. We see that people are not very much interested and speaking against it as well. And we see that some local places where logins have been set up have been closed or been removed, and that's what is happening now. The place that we live, but for other centers are yet still having that concern as well. Thank you.
The news that we received as well at that time was that there are some instances of victory in which community, maybe not directly the community that we work together with them, but some other communities could bring cases against logging companies in the court. So there were at least 2 victories already. So legally, it is important from the legal term, because you have the precedents, so that for the next court cases, we can make reference to those victories. Because the legislations are there. If you look at the documents in Solomon Island, there are some legislation, some laws to protect the nature. For example, the logging cannot be done 400 meters from the lowest level, but they still do it. There are some wood, I think black wood, something that is very, very precious, that cannot be cut. And then the logging companies like, oops, by mistake, sorry. And they are very expensive for the Chinese market. So in several cases that they just cut the normal ones, but the precious one, just by chance, when you cut it. Nothing else you can just put it back. So there are certain things in which now the international community is more and more aware of the situation in Solomon Island as a case study, as an example, in which that something has to be done, because it also has impact on, of course, climate change. And so from one issue, activity, the impact is really bigger, getting bigger and bigger. It's interconnected. And because of that, I think what we are trying to do at the United Nations is really trying not to forget that issue. In fact, normally we will bring Warwick to Geneva just right after this meeting, but because of the administration issue, visa, passport. So this is something that many of us experience, not as people coming from the other side, that we have to apply for visa, and sometimes the passport is the validity is not long enough, and then we have to fill in 120 questions and reasons at the airport. We were stopped. We forget maybe our letter of invitation in our luggage and so on and so on. That sort of experience is very humbling experience, but it doesn't stop us. It will never stop us. So we have to continue. This is also an experience in which, yes, the more like the reading of the of today, when we are weak, we are strong. Then we go through that experience, we become strong. What's next? I don't worry. Just give it to me, and then I'll just be stronger. So that's also very, very for us. It's very real. We wanted to bring Warwick so that Warwick can speak at the United Nations, can provide testimonies, but not this time because of that business issue. Next time, there will always next time. We still have that hope to do it again. So that sort of example is the real example that we are trying to do within the Franciscans International in bringing the good news. We know that the Franciscan International is not going to solve all the problems, but again, we will try to do our best in addressing those issues. Now I'm going to come to a more boring story about how we work as Franciscan International. So I will just try to be a bit quick. So as Franciscan International, we try to be the bridge between the Franciscans and the communities that the Franciscans are living or serving with the UN, with the international community. Why UN is important for us? Because often the decisions are taken or the direction are given by the United Nations to states in which the states are encouraged to follow. We have 2 offices in Geneva. It's very simple office, by the way. It's really, really small office, very crowded because we share the office with the Dominican, with the Good Shepherd sisters, with the Maris brothers, with the Christian brothers, with the sisters of the Daughters of Charity of St. Vincent of Paul, with Vivat International. Really crowded, but full of joy. Really fun. Not all the time, yeah. Full of joy in the sense that there is a sense of community. So that's what we are trying to find, try to feel. Because the sense of community, we have the same struggles, we have the same objective, we have the same difficulties. So we try to work as much as possible together. So that's why in Solomon Island we work with the Dominican. But on the issue of the Philippines, for example, we work together with the Dominican also, but also with the Christian brothers. With the World Council of Churches, I'm very close with the World Council of Churches because I see the potentials that we need to work together. We can't work by ourselves. It's very, very important. And I'm very glad that next week or the week after, I'm going to see Glenn, who is the UN rep of the Anglican Union in Geneva. So this is also, once again, in a way in which we can collaborate together, we work together. Not only with the faith-based organizations, but also with other organizations. At the very moment, for example, this morning, we have partners coming from the Philippines. Only one is Catholic, the rest, I don't know their religions, it's not a matter for me. But we work together to address the issue that I spoke yesterday. So we have another mother of a victim, another mother of a man that was killed. She is now in Geneva, and she will try to do advocacy, to work with different organizations to speak at the United Nations and try to denounce the situations. We also work with another human rights organization called Human Rights Watch, because Human Rights Watch is very influential. So we try to bring them as well at the front. We also bring one academic coming from the University of Philippines because they have good so-called methodology in documenting the human rights violations. So when you have a good methodology, a good report, the diplomats will listen slightly better than us, who often is considered as just screaming, just like what is it? the lady in the Bible, no? I was just screaming, just sometimes ignore them, no? But when we compose a good team, and then our voice will be heard. So these are more or less the countries in which Franciscan International are focusing, because we are limited, we have limited capacities, so we have to choose, unfortunately, on the places in which we would like to work. Solomon Island is somewhere there, right? You should find out. It's near, nearby Papua New Guinea. We can see it. So we work on the issue of distribution in Solomon Island, climate change in Australia as well, in West Papua, Indonesia, Philippines, and so on and so forth. And we work also in the Africa, in particular in Mozambique, Madagascar, DRC, Congo Kinshasa, Cameroon, and also Benin. And for the Americas, although mainly we work in Latin America, but we also work on the issue of displacement in Canada, especially with the migrants, with the United States as well, in fact, because the United States also shares the big responsibility on the migration crisis in the Americas, no? Very big responsibility. So we also work with them. And now we started with a new program for Europe. Just freshly started in the 1st of September. So this is also because the Franciscans in Europe, they feel that we don't work with them. There's also a little bit anecdote on that, you know, because many organizations is willing to criticize the situations outside Europe. It's good to say that, yeah, the human rights in Africa, they are not very good, in Asia Pacific not very good, in Latin America very good. When they have to look at their own backyard, no, it's okay, let's discuss about something else. We don't have any fund. There's no funders or funding agencies who will finance the human rights situation in Europe. It's not the priority. But I don't have to explain to you, but it is a problem. No? Not only on the issue of migration, but so many other issues. And because of the call of the Franciscans on that, and then we started to really decide to work on Europe. So we will start with the migration issue that will focus mainly in southern and Mediterranean. So Mediterranean new, so it means Italy, Spain, Portugal, but also Northern Africa, in which you have this migration flows, but also in the British Isles. So the person who is in charge is Brother Ewan McMullen, Irish, who used to be a lawyer in Belfast. Now he is in ACC, but he will move to Geneva. So it's also good to use the resources that we have. Franciscan, who is a lawyer, who understands human rights, to work and to speak on that issue by himself. No? So we will start soon program in Europe, starting with the issue of migrations, but not limited. We will try to also speak out on how the situation of human rights in Europe. So we are covering the Americas, Africa, Asia Pacific, and Europe. It's still a small team. We are not more than 12%, and we will have a new leadership who is there. It will be very, very, at least this is my personal view, it's going to be historically important for us as Franciscan families to be led by a lay person. So this is also to prove that lay has the same opportunity and capacity as the ordained, and Anglican, you know, because we know that Franciscan International mainly is Catholic. I'm Catholic, and I know the origin of the Catholic Church for many things, many. And the fact that the Franciscan families, the Conference of the Franciscan Families, is open to have a lay Anglican to lead Franciscan International. So within our small bubble, it's very historical. For me, it's very historical. Because this is also equal opportunity to show that we have the capacity, regardless of our background. So it's very important. So we are very much excited to embark in this new journey with Blair. So that's an opportunity. So this is where we work, how we are, and then I explained you already about the stories yesterday. So this is what we are trying to do. Really try to be a bridge, try to be a component between the United Nations mechanisms and also the reality of the grassroots, so that we can move forward together, we can improve the situation together, and one cannot function without the other. So this is in our how to say, way of working. So we have to work together. And this is about United Nations. United Nations, it's an organization that maybe it doesn't have that much in the international level, but it has to be there, because if we don't have the United Nations, we don't have any space in which all the nations can meet together and can discuss together. The result might not be extraordinary, but the fact that everyone can speak, everyone can have the opportunity to discuss, it's very important. Because the story is also based on the war, no? Unfortunately. After the First World War, we have the League of Nations, and after that, the League of Nations that doesn't succeed, with so many weaknesses, we changed into something that can be better than League of Nations. Unfortunately, we had the Second World War, and then we give birth to the United Nations in 1945. So it has the mandate, which is very relevant to us even today, although it was there for the situations after the Second World War, but it's still very, very valid today to safeguard the world peace. Are we more peaceful now? We don't know. So that's also a good question for us, no? Like going back again in 1945, the issue of peace was there. Are we peaceful now? Not very sure. Ensuring compliance with international law. There's also a story about the Philippines. Not that I'm against the Chinese, but I'm against the Chinese government to some extent. Like, because we work a lot on the Philippines. The Philippines has a dispute with China on Spratly Islands. Maybe you heard about that. It's small islands, like a groups of islands in the Pacific, but much smaller, but strategic. So during the time of Duterte, the one that killed 30,000 plus, there was a case in the International Maritime Tribunal on 2 islands. China said, yes, it is within the 9-dash strike principle of the Chinese history or something. But the Philippines said, no, they are ours, because they have been part of the Philippines, especially for the fishermen, as a point of reference for the fishermen. And the tribunal went on and on and on and on, and Philippines won. So the 2 islands belong to the Philippines. China said, I don't give a damn, I don't care. Really. They occupied the island, they built sort of military base. Although they agreed to go to the international court, International Maritime Court, and now the dispute is still going on, because the last story that I heard 3 weeks ago or 2 weeks ago, the Chinese fishermen, the Philippine fishermen, they went there. Just it's the traditional fishing ground, but they were responded with water cannon by the ship, warship of China. Hey, you're in our water. It's ours. But the Philippines said, no, we agreed in the tribunal. It's ours. China said, they don't say that. Who cares? But they said, no, it's ours. Historically, it's ours. So there's the whole dispute now. So this is to say that even ensuring compliance with international law is still a challenge nowadays. Even if you have the decisions of the International Maritime Tribunal, you cannot go higher. Maybe the highest is the Holy Spirit, but you cannot go there. So it's not respected. Protecting human rights. No? We have achieved several things, but it is still an ongoing problem. And we should not look at, we have to look at the distance, but also look at our own environment, our own neighborhood, our own life, our own parish, our own church. Because sometimes we feel that the situation somewhere else is worse, but if we look at our environment, maybe it's not better, maybe it's different issue, Maybe it's different issue. In my backyard, I mean, in the Catholic Church, women's right, you see. So that's also a big homework, no? I mean, the Vatican regarding right of the child, you know, and promoting international cooperation. This is also very interesting for us because, of course, everyone is in favor of international cooperations. But how do we link to that international cooperations? The cooperations between Sogaware and Sogaware is the Prime Minister of Solomon Islands with China. Is it international cooperation that we would like to have? Big question. International cooperation should be on the equal base, but is it really? We have to ask that questions. No? So that's still really challenging for us. So what the UN has set up as the aim in 1945, in fact, it's still very relevant today. It still speaks a lot to us today, and we still need to address that. And it's a community, it's supposed to be community. It's a community of 193 member states. And it's growing. The two states that are not members, observers, that are very important is the Holy See with Palestine. Because Palestine is partially recognized. Holy See is recognized as a state, but she prefers not to be a member state. She's still there. And then, of course, the Declaration of Human Rights in 1948. And it's very interesting if you look at this Declaration of Human Rights, although it was drafted after the Second World War, but the relevancy of the situation today is still very high. So we work in this frame as Trans International. We are one among maybe 5,000 NGOs. So to be one of many NGOs as well. However, because of the I'm not trying to be a salesman, but the fact that we work with quality in Geneva or in New York as well, we play a certain role. We play quite important role. One of the strengths for us is really the link between the discussions, the legal discussions at the UN with the grassroots, with the community. I think that is really the best, let's say, profile that we can bring, that we can contribute to the UN. So when we talk about, for example, the situation in Myanmar, we try to work behind the doors because of the second petitions. We had the experience of the FMM sister, the Franciscan Mary of Missionary of Mary sister in Myanmar, whose compound was burned, bombed. They had to, this sister community together with children, women, and elderly mainly, they had to run in the forest for 2 weeks or 3 weeks. And some of them are still in the forest now because their convent, their building were burned, attacked. So when at one point, it was last year, the provincial came to Rome, and we sneaked her out to Geneva so that she could speak with the diplomats. And for her, her security was at stake as well, because it is known by the Myanmar diplomat that she is doing advocacy. The consequence can be her community in some parts of Myanmar, because the religious community now is targeted. In the past it was not, but now in the last 1 year, they are targeted because they provide support for the population. They provide food, they provide shelter, they provide medical equipment. They are targeted now. In Sagyang state, the Dominicans, they run to the forest. I think in the capital, the OFM, they prefer to be slightly quiet because they are a very small number. In the western part nearby Bangladesh, many of their communities are burned. I mean, I cannot show you the picture because it's really a very sensitive picture, but burned, and some people were shot dead by the military, by the police. So for us, we can bring these stories. We can relate this story with the UN processes, with the hope that the situation will improve. But once again, we cannot pretend that we are a single player. No, never. We have to work in communion with others. That's what we are doing now. But there are some also positive examples that we've used several times. The example comes from a country called Benin. I hope you know where Benin is. So Benin is a small state in Western Africa, in which we work on the issue of children accused of sorcery, or children accused of the member of witch children. To cut the long story short, some of the housewives in northern part of Benin, they are Franciscans, and they feel that some of the babies were born differently, slightly differently. They will be considered as witch. Thus, they have to be killed. So the practice was a bit rampant. It was a practice of hundreds of years. So, for example, if it's not the head that comes first, the leg, whatever, okay, this is, and they were not killed immediately. They can be killed at the age of 1 or 2. Or so, yeah, there were methodology of killing as well, just using the hit against the tree, horrible things. So it happened. So this Sister Madeleine, I met her. I had the honor to meet her. Sister Madeleine started to see that that's not correct. So she started to protect some of those children who were potentially accused of being witch. And then we started to document some cases. And then we did like what we do in Solomon Island. We prepared a little bit of report, report to the United Nations. I think it was around 2008, 2009 we started. And then when that report was presented to the UN, Benin government was like, "You're telling a lie, or you don't have that practice. You're just making stories, those yours, the Franciscan, so denial." And we said like, no, we have this Sister Madeleine who's working on that. And even at one point, we also had a boy who was saved and then adopted in another country. And then he said he made a testimony, if I was not taken out of the country, I would not be here because I was born differently. Not physical, but a different way. So he could give the testimony that it's me who could have been a victim. And then we had long process discussions, of course, with the real testimonies, with the real people, real cases. And then the government started to say that, okay, there are some practices, okay, we can recognize it. But for us, we don't stop there, no? What we do together with the Franciscans is that then let's work together. How to find a solution? Because it has been a millennial practice. So the Franciscans, what they do together with the local communities, started to make role play, visualize, and then they organize several. They're very, very using very interesting, visualizations. The drama is to reenact that cruel things in front of the religious, traditional religious leaders, traditional kings, to see that, do you think it's right? Do you think it's the way for us to treat children? And they start to have more and more awareness. Okay, that's not good practice, and so on and so forth. And then we got support also from the international community, from the French embassy, and then we started to have a Franciscan Foundation in Benin, and it's really starting to make campaign with T-shirt, with music, etc., etc. And finally, the practice started to decrease, or not in public domain anymore. But for us, it was not enough in the sense that there is no legislation, there's no laws protecting these people. So the Franciscans started to work with the lawyers in Benin, starting to look at the child code and the penal code. So the child code and the penal code now is really adapted to criminalize that harmful traditional practice. So now it is included within the penal code and within the child code, so that we have that. But we don't stop there as well. I mean, it was adopted not long time ago, but we start to really look at the cases and go together with some other communities to make sure that that practice is really abolished. So it takes at least from 2008 until now, more or less 15 years. But this is to show that the good news is there. We have to be very patient. We have to do it together with other people. And we have to bring that hope to the people, no? So that we can do that. We can make the change. And we should not provide false hopes, as I said, but include the community in the process. Include the community in this struggle, in this journey. Because they will understand, we will understand each other, and we will try to see how we can work together so that we can achieve that goal. Of course, the good news is there, but we also have some stories, some examples in which it's not final yet. It's still on the journey. We don't know how we will end, but we are there. For example, when we are working on the issue of the human rights in West Papua, in my own country, it's still very long, it's still very difficult. Every day, at least you have one indigenous people being killed by the military. Every day you count it. As I said, also in the Philippines, we have the new government. The new government is the son of the former dictator. The vice president is the daughter of the recent dictator. That's the reality, you know. Let's face it, you know. Let's try to do something. And the situation in Guatemala also, now we have a new government. Hopefully it's going to be better. Apparently the current president is better. And we work in Brazil, in which the multinational companies are still rampant. We have a better president now. Let's use the opportunity to work. But it's really an ongoing process. We work together. Don't be frustrated. Always have the hope, you know. Bring the hope for ourselves that we can do a change. We can contribute to the change, and we have to work together. So the process of working together, of journeying together is very, very important. And this kind of meeting for us is very, very important so that we can get this source of energy, you know? And when we come to the community, it's really, really important. During the pandemic, we were suffering because we didn't have any partners coming. So we were a bit lost. When we don't have the partners, when we don't have the interaction, we are a bit lost. So thanks God, that's not the case now. Thanks God that we can bring people again. And after that, we can really journey together and trying to make our society a bit better. So maybe I end there so that I can give it back to, yeah, there's some questions.
It's not a question, I'm adding to what you just said. We are in Benin. When I say we, not the Franciscans or not the Third Order, because I'm part of the Institute of Healing of Memories and funded by Bread for the World. We are in Benin addressing the impact of this killing that has affected a lot of families. So we're trying to set up an office and train people how to deal with this, impact that has affected so many people in the northern part of Benin. And we started last year, and we're still continuing.
We need to talk. In all the serious stuff, just a funny story first. Here we are. This is the meeting of the Universal Periodic Review of Human Rights. It's happening this time in COVID era. There are about 3 or 4 people sitting in the actual meeting, the Human Rights Meeting Hall in Geneva, with this wonderful ceiling. The director is sitting up on the stage and she's calling nation by nation to come forward, and they're presenting by online. And of course, it all goes like, Algeria, you're on mute. You need to unmute. Here we are. You think the United Nations might actually, we have the same problems with Zoom and online stuff all around the world. So that's good. One of the things I picked up, when talking about this with brothers and others in Solomon Islands is, sometimes I think in the big Western countries, we think the UN is a big bureaucracy and it's a bit out of touch and it's just there and sucks up lots of money and doesn't do much. And some of that is true. But for the small island states, the large ocean states, like Solomon's, it's one nation, one voice. And that's important. So even the smallest of nations have got a voice and a place and power in the UN. And that's one great reason to be working there. And it's also another of the areas, of course, because some certain countries try to gather up support by their, not mentioning any other countries' names already, but they gather up support by being generous to a whole lot of countries. They can buy their votes. And so I think there's another area why, also why it's good to be working to help counteract that. And then another kind of related bit of all this world is something called the Communion Forest, which you've perhaps all heard of by now. It was launched at the Lambeth Conference last year. It comes under the umbrella of the Anglican Alliance, and which is to which Paulo was a theological consultant, and it happens around the Anglican Communion. All sorts of relief and development and advocacy programs are under that. In PNG, Father Peter Moy is the regional coordinator now, and before him was Kagalan Kabi Kabi. So we've got good connections there too. And the forest is trialing a thing for mapping happens on top of Google Maps, sort of like that. And you map out the area of land that you're looking after, and you write a story about what it is you're doing there. You can put photos there, and then when people come and look, they can also look through time, because the Google Map things, you can go back and see what was the satellite picture 20 years ago and now and so on. You can see what the changes in those areas, how the trees are developing, or has it got better or worse. And that's spreading out, and that's going to be something that anywhere, any organisation, the Anglican Communion can be part of. And then when you come and look and you go for hashtag Communion Forest or whatever it is, you'll see all these little maps popping up all around the world. So we're trialing it at the moment to see how it goes, and that's great. John, I'm hoping, I want to give, I think Hillfield would be a good one to sign up for that trial, because you've got a lot of good stuff happening, but you've also got the people who could, handle the stuff of log websites and mapping areas and so on too. So that would be a great one. And SSF is literally supplying a poster boy for the Communion Forest. Our brother Matthew is on quite a lot of the posters and things. There's a great picture of him standing on the beach with a big stick, looking a bit like Moses. So he is our poster boy. He's our advertising for it as well.
Yeah. And if you're interested on the report, we bring some copies of the report on Solomon Island with recommendations. And we also have the annual, I have to promote it to you. This is the annual report 2022 of Franciscan International. And they're all there if you're interested.
Do you still want this one on, or shall I?
Sorry?
Do you still want this one on, or shall I?
No, you can flip off.
No, I'm just wondering.
So we have 40 minutes for the best part of the day. So thank you for listening to the two of us, and for our sharing. And maybe we can, just before we go around, maybe 10 minutes to see what we are taking out from this conversation. Maybe some words in terms of behavior, strategy, or methodology on how to express the good news inside, but then also outside. So we do know these kind words about Jesus. So we should be kind, we should be caring, we should see people, we should act as one, as a community. What else? That's kind words about good news. We should be sharing as opposed to giving. We are people of hope. We are the people of resurrection. So as Roman said, so we are hoping against all hope. Sorry? Listening. Missioning. Yeah. Okay. What else? We have, it's a tricky word, brother, but we have to acknowledge the the suffering as part of our choices, but not as an objective or as a requirement. This is very important because the whole medieval negative theology had and has a horrible impact on our theological discourse. So we're still here today. Oh, Jesus didn't complain in the cross. Why you are complaining? You should be very domesticated and silent and suffering because it's your job to suffer. So careful about this theology. This is a negative theology from Middle Ages, which is horrible. And no, of course we will suffer, but this is as part of our choices, not as a requirement to fulfill our mission. So suffering is not a requirement. Suffering is a part of life, and we need to deal with the suffering, not to romanticize or say it is okay. No, it's not okay. But we need to recognize it. So I am not okay, but sometimes it's not okay. It's okay to be not okay, but sometimes it's not okay not to be okay. But this recognition is important. So the suffering in this frame of as a consequence of our choices, not as a requirement. What else? And there are lots of other different words sometimes we are missing because we are so middle class polite people. So we need to be annoying. This is just like that woman just Budi referred. So look 17 or 18. So we need to make a scene in public, to be all night being annoying in the rich neighborhood, make the judge embarrassed because he's not doing justice. We need to make people embarrassed. We need to be annoying. This is a strategy. We need to be disruptive. It is also dangerous. Of course, we need to be careful about that. In some countries, it's easier than in other countries. But as an overall concept, we need to be disrupting. This is part of our calling, to disrupt the structures and infrastructures that keeps system oppressing people and keeps systems of privilege. We need to be disruptive. That leads to, we need to be passionate. That means we need to be transgressive. If you ever felt in love, you do know that falling in love implies transgression. When we fall in love, we do things that we are not supposed to do. This is transgression. This is part of falling in love. And the falling in love is not some romantic, rose, good wine thing. No, sometimes it's painful. But it needs transgression. So love means transgression as well. We need to keep this in mind. Sometimes some laws, they are not just. Justice doesn't mean fulfill the law. Sometimes breaking the law is justice. So we need to bear this in mind. We need to be, as Jesus was, countercultural in some way. Sometimes we need to not to hide behind our own culture and use this discourse. Oh, I'm so sorry, but this is my culture. As if it is okay. No, some of the things in our own cultures needs to be challenged, or needs to disappear, or needs to change, or needs to adapt. So we do need to bear in mind that. And we need to be conspiring. So we need to be a conspiring community. To breathe together, a safe project. This is conspiring. And it's a very spiritual concept and word in our spirituality. We need to conspire.
Transformism comes to me both within ourselves.
We need to be transformative. Yeah, this is a strategy as well as a methodology. So everything we do, that means we need to be good cookers. That's what we need to cook well. We need cooking skills. That means transforming. Theology and cooking has lots of similarity. So we need to cook, transform, and we need to be careful. Otherwise, we can kill someone if you do not talk. So cooking or transforming means also dialoguing. Because I can cook shrimp to someone who can die if I don't ask. Have you got any allergies? So can I cook shrimp to you? So it's not only cooking, we need to be talking to people, not in order to avoid killing someone with the best intentions. Of course, we need to feed people, but sometimes the best intentions can kill someone or can kill a project. So dialoguing is important. What other things it's maybe come up with our conversation?
Innovation.
We need to use imagination. We need to be innovative. So we need to actually tap again in our capacity to imagine, to dream again. So the systems are taking out our capacity of dreaming because everything is ready. So now we need to dream, to reimagine, to see possibilities. So and also we needed to change the line that there is a light at the end of the tunnel. No, there is a light inside the tunnel. We just have to adjust our vision and be patient. There is light in darkness. It is about adapting and be patient. And we know that by experience. So when we are in the dark, if you are patient, in a few minutes you will start to see. And also you will boost your other senses. So we will learn to collaborate within ourselves. So listening better, touching, smelling. So feeling energy maybe. Sometimes people can feel some energy coming from different places. So it needs patience, it needs adaptation. We need to adapt. One size does not fit everybody. This is very important. So that means plurality, diversity. We need to live with people who we don't agree with. That's a difficult thing to do, but this is a challenge. And that means we needed to compromise sometimes, which is also a difficult thing to do. So what to compromise, when to compromise, but we do need to learn to compromise sometimes. Why should I say to an old lady in my community that Adam and Eve didn't exist? There's no point. So why should I cut this beautiful romantic view that this lady has? It doesn't fit anything. So I need to compromise my scholarship in order to keep talking and to make those ladies on board of the transformation process. So how we compromise our and we need to be cynical in a good sense. You know that lady, Syrophoenician woman that Jesus called a dog, or implied she was a dog. So she wanted healing for her daughter, and Jesus said, "I'm sorry, but it's not well to take the bread or the food from the children and to give to the dogs." So we need to. So women in the Bible are very important models, not the males. Women. So we need to. Well, there are some important males, but women should be taken into account. What she did. She was not an ordinary woman. She was a very well-educated woman, and she belonged to what we call the Cynic philosophical school, which uses a rhetoric, particular kind of rhetoric, to enter in dialogue. So what she did, Jesus actually implied she's a dog. What she did, she didn't fight. She did not fight. She just maybe. I was portraying her thinking, "Oh, poor guy, he's so stupid." But that's fine. I'm not fighting stupidness. Let's move on. If you think I'm a dog, that's okay. It's your problem, not mine. You need glasses, not me. So I'm not a dog. So if you don't know that, it's your problem. And I am informing you, I will get the bread. The bread does not belong to you. If I don't get from the table, I will get from the floor, but I will get it. This is a cynic way of relating. It's a philosophical school. Maybe some of you may know this, but she's not an ordinary woman, so we need to learn from her. Sometimes we don't need to fight, we just agree. Well, that's okay. Yeah. If you are happy, that's fine, but I will do this information to you. Sometimes I mean to my students when they don't want to agree with me, or they are very out of the group. Okay, if you are happy with this, that is fine. Just do not write this in the exam. You can keep your truth, I don't care. But when you write, do not do that. So be smart and write what I want to read. Then I can read it. So just be smart. So sometimes you just don't fight. We need to be very cynical in this thing. Cynical in a good sense. This is it. Use this rhetoric, like this woman. And she got what she needed, actually. And Jesus had to change his decision because he was not well informed. And then now he is informed. I don't own the bread. Actually, the bread is to everybody else. What else? Maybe 1 minute more. Joyful. We need to be joyful. Yeah, we need actually to learn or to exercise joyfulness, happiness. And we need to be more graceful in terms of theology. We need to promote more this Jesus theology of grace, not the theology of retribution or distribution, but the theology of grace, which is the theology of restoration. It's a very good word nowadays, isn't it? Economy of restoration, theology of restoration, which is theology of grace, and change our retribution mindset, patriarchal and imperialistic structure. So which is expressed. So I convert, so God forgive me, or I convert because I understood and I experienced the forgiveness of God. What is the math? What's the equation? The usual equation from medieval times is I need to repent, I need to change, I needed to please God because he's an annoying child and make him a sin in the supermarket, so then he can give it to me. This is the usual equation. But this is not the Jesus theology or half of the Old Testament theology. No. Our job is to make sure that people know they are loved and they are not abandoned. So they will change, or we will change, because we experience love. We don't change to fall in love. We change because we fell in love. It's the other way. And we adapt. And we change in a way that sometimes we don't like it. My mom used to say, when I was a very kid, I was a very picky on food. And he said, oh, thank you for the information. You don't like it, but eat. I'm well informed now. You don't like it. Thank you. But please go. You don't get what you want every time in your life. So then we need to change. We need to live with that. So this is maybe Jesus telling us something now. So we don't need to like it, but sometimes it's necessary. So let's move it in a joyful way. This is why community is so important. And then this is why religious life is so pivotal to Christian spirituality in our communities. So we need to spread out our way of